45 minutes. That is the length of what many describe as Michael Snow's avant-garde masterpiece, Wavelength. A 45-minute one-take consisting of a zoom from one end of a room to another. It's described as one of the most consequential shots in history. It's a movie I like to bring up quite often to friends, especially those outside of the film bro sphere, just because it's so heralded. It's on the Sight and Sound 100, I believe. Yeah, it is. And when I tell them that one of the most heralded films of all time is a 45-minute one take from zoom from one end of the room to another, they look at me like I'm fucking crazy. And they're like it's all meaningless movies and art and critique and just all of it within the film sphere. And I think that's really interesting because in a way it is all meaningless. And maybe that's the point. I just mean of art in general. Maybe not meaningless. Perhaps a better word to use is subjective. It's all subjective. Anyways, I decided if I couldn't get off my ass and actually finish a film because I'm such a perfectionist about this shit and wildly homebodied as of late, then I would just sit down in my backyard on a cool autumn day and just talk for 45 unbroken minutes. And that's what we're going to do. My computer died today. It affected me a lot more than I thought it would. It's just a computer, you know? But when old Bessie finally blue screened, that's what I call her, I was legitimately heartbroken. Like I lost a family member or something. I mean, I've had that computer for 10 years. It's a laptop. When I bought it, it was like a, maybe not top of the line. Well, maybe. It was an Alienware laptop. I bought it for like $2,000 or something like that. Bunch of money I saved up over time. And I've just used it ever since. But now it's finally dead and gone. And I don't know how to feel about that. Somebody once told me that we often react more to what we're reminded of rather than what's actually occurring in front of us. And when I got so upset about my computer, I wondered, what is it I'm actually reacting to? And I don't really have an answer for that. But I have been stuck on the concept of death lately. I find it fascinating that everyone is able to just walk through their lives every day like it isn't coming. You know, one night awaits us all. Every last one of us. And I find that paralyzingly terrifying. The fact that at any moment, during any day, I could just keel over. And what would I have left behind, you know? And I think part of the reason I find it so terrifying and particularly paralyzing is because I've died before. Believe it or not, in 2021, I died. Only for a matter of seconds. But I have a heart condition called atrial fibrillation. That's basically where your atrial chambers of your heart, they get into an arrhythmia basically, so they don't match up with the rest of the heart. Really, the heart should all beat as like one consistent thing, you know, from chamber to chamber to chamber to chamber. and that all becomes the bump bump, bump bump. But my heart, when I woke up on that morning, I actually don't know when it was, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. My heart was doing a lot of freestyle jazz. And what's crazy is I never would have known if I didn't take 3 healthcare classes in high school and learn how to take my own blood pressure and things of that nature. I'm actually at least I was a certified EMR from those classes and a test I had to take at like this fancy building, and that was the only reason I knew I needed to go to the hospital. And when I got there, first I went to urgent care. When I said I had an arrhythmia, I was only maybe 19, 20 at the time. The doctor laughed, which I thought was kind of funny. I was like, all right. He laughed, or I think it was a woman. I can't remember these days. But the doctor laughed, and she said, I doubt that, but we'll see. And then she gets her stethoscope, and she checks my heart, and then she makes this face. And then she goes to get an EKG, electrocardiogram, and she brings it back in the room, and she attaches all the nodules to me, and she's assuring me that everything's going to be fine. And then there's about a minute and a half of silence, and then she looks up and says, you need to go to the hospital now. And I was like, oh. And of course my mom starts freaking out. She's freaking my mom out hard. She's like, you need to take like an ambulance. And my mom was like, we need to call an ambulance, we need to call 911. And I don't want to do that. So I'm like, dude, I don't want to ride in an ambulance. Can't we just drive there? So finally my mom lets up and we drive there. We go to the emergency room, and after a lot of back and forth between me and the doctors, a lot of asking if I was on meth, and it was fair. It wasn't a racism thing. It was because I believe only 0.5% of people that actually experience atrial fibrillation experience it under the age of 25. And I was a cool 19. So, in fact, all the nurses and doctors were coming by to like sneak a peek into my room because I was some sort of medical mystery. Anyways, they had to turn me on and off like a computer. And when I mean turn me off, I mean like, I'm dead. I'm back. And when I tell people that, they have this look on their face, and they always ask me, what was dying like? And I've got the worst answer of all time. I don't remember. I don't remember what dying was like because they put me under before they shocked me. I asked my mom to record me because I wanted to get just them shocking me. Turns out when you get shocked like that, you actually sit up straight like Dracula, like Nosferatu. And I really wish my mom got that on camera, but of course she didn't record it. And I wish my sister was there because she would have recorded it. Because then I would have made like memes out of it or something. Bitch, I'm back up my coma. Something stupid like that. Some days it freaks me out. Like I joke, but I think it really freaks me out all the time that if I didn't take 3 specific classes in high school, or maybe just one of the classes, I would have just died. I would have not noticed anything. It would have happened for days, and eventually I would have just had a heart attack or a stroke and died. Well, at least more permanently than I already did. And some days the lack of a video makes me scared because I actually don't even know when it happened. I don't remember. I don't even remember if I got getting the year right. I don't know the date. And I refuse to track back and figure out when it was, look through my phone, or ask my mom. Because I have this deep fear that if I actually track everything bad that's ever happened to me in my life, it'll all lead back to that moment where I went to sleep and never woke up, or rather woke up in hell. And hearing that out loud, I think that really says a lot about my life and the direction of it. Which is weird because right now I'm doing better than ever, but it doesn't feel like it at all. My birthday's coming up. I'm going to be turning 24, and I'm really not happy about it. I used to be fine with birthdays, used to be whatever about them, but as I'm getting older, I'm in the prime of my life, is something I have to remember. It scares me. And I can think about this quote my dad told me one time, where he was like, all these issues you're having, people care because you're young. But when you turn 25, nobody's going to give a shit anymore. I know what you're thinking about that. And the issues he's talking about are my various mental health struggles that we will get to. And basically what he was saying is that I needed to get my life together by 25, or nobody was going to give a fuck anymore. Nobody was really going to want to help me because, I'm a lost cause. And that's how I feel a lot of days. A lost cause. And it's weird because I finally got a good job, like a career job. It's going to start soon, after my birthday. And I'm finally a published photographer. I got into an art gallery the other day. But I'm not fulfilled by any of that on its own, which is really weird. If anything, the publishing has just made me really scared. It's for this Atlanta photography group exhibition called Storytelling 2025. It's a series I shot in 2024 called Beyond the Wall in Pleasant Hill, in a neighborhood in Macon, Georgia. It's a series on the cyclical nature of gentrification and devaluing black homes, and how they don't really care about us, if I'm going to put it in Michael Jackson's words. And that's something I'm very proud of. I put a lot of work into that. And I've won like 3 or 4 awards. One of them was a Fine Arts Photography Award. I believe some sort of second place kind of prize, or it's not even second place, it was an honorable mention. But I'm on their page of like there's the winner, and then there's all the honorable mentions, and there's like 15 of them. It's an international competition, and I'm the only black American, and I believe I might also be the only American who won. And for some reason, when I tell people that, I'm embarrassed. I don't know why. Is it because I needed to win? Because I wasn't first place? I got another honorable mention from Monovision's Black and White Awards 2025 as well. And I didn't even tell anybody about that because I was embarrassed again. I don't know why I'm so hard on myself all the time. And maybe it's because everybody's been hard on me my whole life. I'm the oldest child out of two. I'm the only son, and then there's my sister. She's about 4 years younger than me. But I'm very much the black sheep of my family, be it just my own little circle of my family, my mom, my dad, me and my sister, or the greater family as it exists. I have a really big family. On my dad's side, he has 3 siblings and they all have 2 kids. And on my mom's side, she has 3 or 4 siblings and they all have 2 kids. So I have a lot of cousins, a lot of family. And on my dad's side, I'm the oldest. And everybody talks to me like I'm the head of the family and I'm the leader. And I'm supposed to do these great things. And sometimes I wish I underachieved growing up, but unfortunately, I was a very high achiever growing up. And I'm not trying to do some cringe like, oh, I was a gifted kid and I'm all burnt out now. You know, I don't want anybody to feel bad for me. I'm not trying to say anything profound or anything depressing. I'm just talking just to talk. But unfortunately, yeah, I was one of the gifted kids or whatever the hell. You know, I've been in magnet programs since I was in elementary school. You know, those advanced programs. And when I got into high school, I don't know what happened. Well, you know, if I think about it, I can predict it was issues with my dad. But I just got into this place where I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand it anymore. I was deeply depressed, or at least I was realizing that I was and always have been deeply depressed. And I started just getting C's on purpose, just here and there, not where it would actually affect my GPA. I'd done the calculations. I was in National Honor Society, which means I had the 4.0. I feel like such a prick saying that, but it's only because it's related to the story. I had a 4.0, and I don't know, man. I used to be smart. First time I took the SAT, I didn't study. I got a 1450. Second time, I lied that I studied, and I got a perfect score. And to my family, that meant I was going to do great things. I was going to be a genius. I was supposed to be a doctor. You know, that's what I was supposed to do. But I didn't do any of that. All my classmates have came and went. Some of them went to Harvard. Some of them just went to Jat Tech, KSU. You know, and I envy all of them who have graduated. I got into college with a full ride, and I hated myself and my life so bad, and was experiencing these what I would call dissociative and manic episodes that affected my life so much that I just failed again and again and again and again and again. And finally it got to the point where they took my scholarship away. And I knew that was coming, and I think that's why I tried to kill myself. Because it had been about a couple days of me doing that thing I do where I either stay up for days on end or I do like Da Vinci sleep, like Kramer talks about, Go watch that episode of Seinfeld if you don't know what I'm talking about. But I would just sleep intermittently an hour here or there, and I was awake most of the time. And I was so behind in all my work, and I was looking in the mirror one night when all my roommates were asleep, and I didn't recognize myself. My hands didn't look like my hands, and my face didn't look like my face. Not in that I hadn't shaved or anything like that, although I was likely very unkempt. It just didn't feel like me. It didn't register that it was me. I knew these things were happening, that Elijah M. Pritchett was failing out of school and struggling really hard and everything else, but that wasn't me. I'm not him. I was something else entirely. That's probably the craziest I've ever felt in my life. And I come to my roommate with a bottle of my blood pressure pills. Should I get into this? We're already into it. I come to my roommate with a bottle of pills that would have killed me. And I'm just tweaked. I'm tweaked out of my fucking gourd. And I'm like, what I tell him is that I feel if I down these bottle of pills and go to the hospital, I'll get an extension on all my assignments. But really, there was never a plan in terms of like when I took the pills, when I was going to take the pills if he didn't stop me. I don't think I really cared if I made it to the hospital or not. I was just ready to get off the train, you know. Check out Stop This Train by John Mayer. Amazing song, beautiful. I relate to it heavily. But I was just ready to get off the train, man. The never-ending train. I felt like I had been in a tunnel for so long, and I was just ready for it to stop. Obviously, he took the pills from me, and that saved my life, because I would have killed myself that night if given the opportunity. And then I continued to tweak for a while, failed out of school again, lost my scholarship, and that's pretty much where everything went to shit in my house. My dad had finally had enough of me. But, you know, I say that, but me and him have never gotten along. Not even gotten along. I grew up in fear of my dad, quite frankly. It wasn't until I went to the psych ward that I realized something major about my relationship with my father. Everyone was telling stories about, in group therapy, about just things that had happened in their life that had shaped them. I believe that was the question. And then it got to me, and I was like, I don't know, I feel bad talking because I grew up very well off, you know, with a family that's very financially stable, and I have a lot of privileges that a lot of people don't. I don't really feel I can relate to you guys' issues, and I feel bad talking about them. And of course, everybody told me that was bullshit and I needed to speak anyways. So I did. And I told this story, which I will tell you now. A lot of people lose their parents and they have all these fond memories, or rather they move out of the house and they have all these fond memories, and that's how I feel about my relationship with my mother. It's how I feel about my relationship with my sister. It's always been different with my dad, and it's not like I want it to be different, it's just how it is. I've lived in fear of my dad my entire life, at least until I was old enough to fight back. But he used to just come home mad, angry. I don't know what about, I guess the work day, because he was the main breadwinner and he worked a lot. But he would literally cry over spilled milk. And really I'd cry over spilled milk, because I'd spill milk and he'd, right in my chest, knock the wind out of me. I'd get yelled at or something like that. And that was pretty much just a regular thing in my household. Not pretty much, it was a regular thing. I distinctly have a memory of my dad holding me at the top of the stairs by my throat, just threatening to throw me down them. And then my mom came upstairs from the basement, and she was finally able to get him off of me. And there was a lot of yelling. And that's most interactions I remember between my dad and my mom, just because they stand out the most. There was always a lot of fighting between them, at least when I was growing up. But the most memorable fights were always over me. I fucked up this or I fucked up that because I had ADHD, and we didn't know it at the time, but I am on the autism spectrum, and I've been told by my father that I was a very difficult kid to raise, and I can actually see that. Although he told it to me as like a that's why I hit you, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, those are most of the memories of my parents fighting or fighting over me. One time I was getting spanked by my dad with a belt, and it just kept going and going and going to the point where I was bleeding, and I went back to stop the belt, and he told me to put my hands back, and when I put my hands back there was blood on my hands, and I started freaking out, spazzing out and screaming and yelling like I wasn't even before. And my mom came in at some point to be like, that's enough, and then she saw what was happening, and that was the first time I've seen her put herself in between me and my dad as a stop. And I will never forget that moment. There's been a million of those moments. Anyways, I told that story. I just kind of trail off. And I look up around the room, group therapy, and it's just dead silent. And everybody's looking at me in horror. And I believe one of my close friends, a friend that I had made in there, I believe she might have been just crying, tearing up. And it was in that moment that I realized that my childhood was not normal, and that everybody didn't experience that. And you may think, Elijah, you were 21 years old and it took you that long to realize you were physically abused growing up? Yeah. This isn't, again, a pity party type thing or feel bad for me or whatever the fuck. This is just my life. It is what it is. That's kind of one of the best things I pulled out of the psych ward, is that it is what it is. You can sit and harp on every bad thing that's ever happened to you and let it destroy you and tear you up from the inside out and become just an awful person because of it, and blame all your problems on it forever. But at some point you have to decide to live for yourself, live beyond your circumstances. I wear 3 rings that I got after I got off the psych ward. I'm going to talk about 2 of them. One of them just says Memento mori. You might think it's corny. I have it because I need it. That is, remember that you will die. I feel like I've wasted a lot of my life just floating, kind of like a specter, from room to room, from here to there, just not really attached to the ground, not grounded. I just floated around where the wind took me, and I didn't really do anything. I don't remember a lot of things. I was so dissociated out of my mind. And this is a reminder for me that I don't want to waste any more time, because I'm gonna die. I already did. And when the big one comes, I'd like to be surrounded by something of my own creation that would make me happy, that would make me feel fulfilled in my final moments. I hope I feel fulfilled in my life before that. Then the other ring is it's a ring of thorns, and you might think, is this a Christianity thing? Absolutely not. It's I actually subscribe to Buddhist philosophies. I'd love to get more into Buddhism, but I do feel it's unachievable under capitalism. But that's a conversation for another day. But this is a reminder to me that suffering is inherent to life. Every now and then, this nicks me. It hurts. And every time that happens, it's a reminder that suffering is inherent to life, but you're still here. And letting go is what will bring you freedom. It will bring you joy and bring you happiness. And I like to wear this every day, and sometimes I forget, especially when I'm down on myself. I forget, or I just don't put it on, but I feel better when I'm wearing it. Psych ward was an interesting place. I'd love to write a TV show about that someday. If everything would go the way I'd like it to go in my life, I would write a TV show about the psych ward, because it's hilarious and life-changing. Life is absurd. I'm an absurdist. I'm an absurdist who subscribes to Buddhist philosophies that everything happening around us all the time is so absurd that might as well laugh. There's not a lot of things on this earth that I don't find funny. And the people closest to me know that. One time my ex-girlfriend, just because she knew it would make me laugh while I was telling a story, she dumped a cup of water on my head. And like, to prank me. We played a lot of stupid pranks like that on each other. But I actually got her back. I won that interaction by just pretending like it didn't even happen and just talking through it. That was a very fond memory. I'm not going to talk. I miss her a lot. She was my best friend. And I fucked that up really bad. Really bad. A lot of my friends, not a lot of my friends, just a couple, honestly, they don't have a lot of sympathy for her in that relationship. but I think it's because they don't know the extent of my actions. And I think if they see me as this one thing, but she got to see everything. And it's not that she didn't like what she saw. In fact, she was there for us. She was supportive. It's that I didn't like what I saw. You know, a lot of people were like, oh, she should have been more there for you, this or that, or whatever, but she was, you know? And it's pretty hard to be there for somebody when they, I don't know, man. I just think it's hard enough being on this end of the relationship, it was hard enough being on that end of that relationship. But I was the one who tried to kill myself during it. You know, that really changes things. And I can't imagine being on the other end when I had to go into a residential facility for 30 days. And it did change my life, and it's improved my outlook ever since. And it was one of the most beneficial things that ever happened to me. But I just can't imagine what that was like on the outside. I didn't have a phone. I would talk to her on short phone calls. We got like 15 minutes every day. And that must have been tough. And I've apologized to her for that. We've both apologized for a lot of things. If there's one thing I regret more than anything in this life, it is the way I treated that woman. And I wasn't a bad boyfriend I used to be a really good boyfriend. And then I just couldn't handle life or anything anymore, the PTSD and of just my life, and it started to show up in my relationship. One of the moments that brings me the greatest shame ever in my life is when we were dog sitting for one of our close friends. And I was just having a terrible time as of late. And she said something innocuous to me, innocuously rude. She was just in a pissy mood, you know, as is her right to be. And she said something rude, and something just snapped. And in that moment, I felt like my fight or flight activated. It felt truly, I truly felt like I was 16 again in my basement fist fighting my dad. And I know that doesn't make any sense to any of you guys, but in my mind, I was there. I was really there. I was actually in a fight or flight, fighting for my life situation. And I just go off on her. I don't hit her, of course. I've never laid my hands on, well, anybody, especially not a woman. My mother raised me better than that. But I just start yelling, and louder than I've ever yelled in my life. But I'm yelling at her. And I'm just saying all these things that don't even apply to the situation. And by the end of it, I think it starts to become clear to myself that I'm talking about my dad. You're not going to bully me. You're not going to this. You're not going to that. I'm not just going to take all the shit you give me for the rest of my life. Blah, blah, blah. I'm yelling. I'm screaming. I look up, and I'm like a 6'3", going on 6'4". I'm a big guy. She's like a little petite girl. And she looks scared. And once again, I'm looking at my hands, and I don't recognize myself. And I just start sobbing. I'm like, oh my God, that had nothing to do with you. I'm so sorry. But my PTSD episodes had just become more and more frequent after that, or just around that time. You know, I addressed a lot of my depression in the psych ward and got some diagnoses. What I didn't address and didn't ever think I'd have to deal with is the cycle of abuse that I had at that moment become a perpetuator of. And it's just something that brings me really great shame. You know, I've really worked so hard to not be that guy anymore. I see perhaps my favorite therapist I've ever had now. His name's Jeffrey. Shout out Jeffrey. And we work on that, the cycle of abuse, you know? And how it's very real. And if you don't pay attention, you can repeat these habits. And you can become exactly what you hate. You can become exactly what you promised yourself for years growing up that you wouldn't be. And I work every day to not be that. So that's a situation that brings me great shame. As it relates to her, we've made up. Our breakup was pretty bad. I consider a lot of that to be my fault because of the way I handled myself towards the end. But we've come to an understanding about how we feel we treated one another and how we wished we went about things a lot better. Of course, it wasn't all my fault and it wasn't her fault. You know, nobody's perfect. It's just didn't work out in that time and place. Sometimes I wonder, am I really chasing closure? That's what everybody says. Oh, you just need closure. You just need closure. Or am I chasing her? We're nearing the end, so I think I'm going to tell one last story. There's a guy I met in the ward. We'll call him Z. And Z told me a story about his life. And I'm going to try and retell it to you. He was a fantastic storyteller, and I can't even compare. But I'm going to try. So, the reason Z was in the ward was because he was an alcoholic. And if you've ever met an alcoholic, you know that the problem isn't the substance. I mean, that's one of the problems. But the substance is really just a tool to avoid these issues. You know, it could be anything. It could be meth, it could be heroin, you know. But it just so happens for him it was alcohol. And one day he's particularly depressed, and Zane is a cutter, you know. So he grabs a handle of vodka, handle of Tito's, I think is the brand. I actually don't drink, but I think that's the right brand. And he sits alone in his house and he just drinks, and he cuts like he's torturing somebody. And by the end of it, he's drunk as shit, practically falling over. He touches his leg. He's got a big just a bloodied hand. And he grabs the Tito's bottle to move it. And he brings it downstairs with him. And eventually he gets a call from his girlfriend at the time. And they were already going through kind of a rough patch, which is probably why he was so depressed, part of the reason. And he doesn't remember what he said to her, but whatever he said, it must not have been good, because she decides to come over. And he doesn't even know. At this point, his pants are off. He's lying on the stairs. There's a bloody handprint on the Tito's vodka laying on the floor. And he hears her come in, but he's too drunk to fucking do anything. And she sees the bloody handprint on the Tito's. And I guess it's just like, she's just like, oh God, what's wrong? What's happening? And she's looking for where he's bleeding and she can't find it. And I guess she realized that he did it to himself. And she lifts up his boxers and she sees the cuts. And she's horrified. She's terrified. She starts crying and he starts to come to. And he's like, it's not what it looks like. He's trying to think of any excuse. But she's like, I don't know what to do. I can't save you from yourself. And so she calls 911. He's too drunk to do anything about it. Too drunk to talk himself out of that situation. And so they take him to the ward. And him and her were already at such a deep, rough patch in their relationship that he needed to step up and fix. That really just did it for them. And he spent a week in Peachford. Actually, probably a couple weeks and some change, if I know Peachford at all. And then they took him to our residential facility directly there. And he hadn't heard from her since. And the last thing he had heard was when he reached out to his mom, that she said she doesn't know if she wants to talk to him anymore, if that's a connection she can maintain. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, so what happened next? I'm on the edge of my seat listening to this story. Z, what happened next? He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, man, I need something. You got to end the story. I need closure. And I'll never forget this. He looks up at me and he goes, there is no closure.